Can you get it?
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on Monday after week 4 college football. We're learning a lot every week. There's some great football being played, good football, and then there was the Auburn-Missouri game where both fans were asked to leave the game wearing bags over their heads. That was ugly. But a lot to talk about today. Jimmy Hodge is on with us. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football. Segment 2, Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham. We'll check in. Top of hour number 2, Tommy Kane over in Atlanta will talk with us about ACC college football and his take on what's going on to this point. Definitely the U is not back, but we're here with you every Monday through Saturday for 2 hours talking college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. We're a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's who we are. And we get the best people out there on our show. Tony Barnhart, true grit journalist, put pen to paper and writing. They bring it to life, and we're going to talk college football with you now. So let's get started. Tony Barnhart, what was your takeaway from this past weekend besides the fact that, Arkansas A&M, a 14-0 lead doesn't mean a whole lot. And Georgia, they gave up some points, but they've still got – here's the debate. Who is the best player in college football? Is it Bryce Young or is it Brock Bowers? But we'll get your take on that. How are you?
I'm doing well. It was an interesting weekend to sort of wrap up what's been an interesting September. I thought Tennessee played well. I was very impressed with the way they played. And when you ask who the best best player in America is, I'm not sure if it's Brock Bowers or if it's Bryce Love or Bryce Young. Maybe Will Anderson from what I see. So it's going to make the Heisman Trophy ceremonies kind of interesting when we get to that point.
It is. Florida, Tennessee. What an atmosphere that was. It just absolutely incredible. We had Mark Ham and Terry from Knoxville, the tailgate scene up there. It's what we've seen a lot in the past up in Knoxville. And I think Tennessee may have been celebrating a little bit early. I thought Tennessee would win the game 38-17. That was my pick. It was 38-27, and I think they played Rocky Top one too many times. But did you see something out of Anthony Richardson that you hadn't seen before? Because I think that was his first road game as an SEC starting quarterback. He is a special talent, but so is Hendon Hooker, and that Tennessee offense is exceptional.
Well, I wrote this morning, just posted it on my website, 5 things we learned during the course of the weekend. And one of those things is that while Florida lost the game, Anthony Richardson got his groove back. And that was the concern I think what was happening is they just needed to figure out ways that he can use his legs. And everybody says that, but they actually did a good job of. He throws much better on the run than he does when he's made to stay in the pocket. And that was the game plan for the last couple of weeks from the opponent. So I think Florida, while they're disappointed to lose the game, to say, hey, maybe our quarterback is on. And if this guy's playing well, we got a shot every time we play.
Well, when you look at Florida's team coming back, 17 seconds left, they get the onside kick. That one thing, the takeaway from it is they're never going to quit. And Billy Napier was very emotional on that sidelines. They showed about 15 or 20 members of his family in the stands, but he is a really good coach. We had Buddy Martin, our friend, on with us Saturday on the round table. And and he thought the Gators would win, and he was close. I mean, I just did not think it was going to be a blowout for Tennessee. It's never that easy when you think that, hey, we're playing at home. Well, the other team's showing up to play too. The next one I got to ask you about is Texas A&M and Arkansas. And then I'm over here live from Red River Ford Toyota in Wynne, Arkansas. A lot of people, man, just shaking their heads. Razorbacks about to take a big lead. KJ Jefferson reaches, like a lot of quarterbacks do, over the top, puts the ball out. But have you seen a play like that in memory when a guy, everybody thought the play was dead, and they hand the ball off to another A&M player, and he outruns everybody? The play isn't over till you hear the whistle, is it?
That's right. Well, the play was obviously obviously KJ Jefferson, who's been brilliant this year.
Yeah.
That was the mistake. You don't do that unless it's fourth down and you've got to make it. You don't put the ball out there for other people to hit. You just don't. You can dive over the top, but you got to secure the football. So that was a mistake. But then the bizarre part of the play, of course, was that the defender who picked up the ball was getting tackled, and one of his teammates literally reached inside and took the ball away from him and kept running. And that was the bizarre thing. And I wrote this morning, this was the most gut-wrenching loss at Arkansas since Sam Pittman's been there, because they had a chance to take control of that football game, because A&M's not scoring a lot of points. 21 points is going to be a lot against them. And so I feel bad for the Arkansas kids, because they play, and it's almost in that when that play happened, Rob, they went into some kind of a daze, and they stayed in that daze to about the fourth quarter, and then they woke up and then had a chance to win the game.
Yeah, and I tell you what, you're right about it. It is gut-wrenching loss. But I was talking with some of the folks over here this morning, Arkansas fans, and I want to ask you this before I go to Jimmy, but they said, I actually think this makes us more motivated to play Alabama. And I said, I agree. You never want a loss, but sometimes you can be 4-0 and go, okay, we're beating everybody we play, but you're playing Alabama. This isn't another galaxy, but that mindset for Arkansas, I think they're being questioned, and that tends to make a team come closer. So I think this is going to be an incredible atmosphere Saturday up in Fayetteville.
Well, just do the math. Here's what you can tell if you're talking to the Arkansas players. Look, guys, your margin for error is now gone. Okay, you have no margin for error. If you don't beat Alabama, you know what it means? If you don't beat Alabama, that means Alabama's got to lose 3 times for you to win a division. And Alabama ain't going to lose 3 times. No. They may not lose 1 time. Yeah. I don't think. So this is basically, if Arkansas had designs on winning the SEC West, if that was one of their goals, I'm sure it was, that goal pretty much gets eliminated if they don't beat Alabama. Conversely, if they do beat Alabama, that means they win the tiebreaker against Alabama if everybody finishes with 1 loss. That's how big this game is for Arkansas.
Yeah, it will be. But and for those people that thought college football was struggling and all like that, I am seeing just massive crowds, the enthusiasm, what we saw up in Knoxville, and all over the country. I just think the appetite fans have for this game is increasing. We just got to do whatever we can to keep it growing. Jimmy, I know you've got some questions for Tony Barnhart. Let's get going. Okay, I don't know where you but Tony, my next question to you is the big picture of college football. We get outside the SEC. There was a really good game. We talked about it Saturday, and that was Clemson at Wake Forest. They delivered on that one. I mean, but what's the takeaway for both of these teams? Obviously, Clemson was number 5 in the country, and I don't know how in the world that happened, but that was an incredible game if you're just a regular fan. But if you're a Clemson fan, are you worried that you're maybe slipping a little bit from where Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama are?
Well, I think quite honestly, there's Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, and then there's everybody else. I think Clemson is in that mix of teams that could finish 4th in the rankings, but Yeah, they gave up a lot of their defense is really good, but I'm telling you, Wake Forest, when Sam Hartman, their quarterback, is healthy, they're a legit top 25 team and can beat just about anybody. So that to go over there, you needed double overtime to win over there, but you won. So Clemson's got to keep winning because somebody's got to be number 4. Okay,
Yeah.
there's at the end of the year, there's going to be somebody in that spot, and Clemson's got to say, well, we got to keep winning if we want that to be us. Because look around at potential Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Got beat. Okay.
Yeah.
USC needed a late touchdown to win against Oregon State. Maryland, Michigan beat Maryland by 7. Okay. I'm just saying there are a lot of teams that are eligible for that 4 slot, and none of them are jumping out to say, pick us.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the ACC top to bottom compared to the SEC right now, on a 1 to 5, where would you rank the SEC? Where would you rank the ACC?
Well, the SEC, if one is being the best, it's the SEC is still the best conference. I think the ACC is probably 3, something like Big Ten's obviously second. I think the ACC and Big 12 would sort of fight over that 3rd spot probably. Okay. I'm not sold on the Pac-12 as you might imagine.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think listen, it's the SEC and the Big 10. All right, now who's 3rd? Probably the ACC or the Big 12.
Got to ask you this next question. You look around within the SEC, in the SEC West, SEC East, what you've seen, again, Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia. In the West, you'd have to say, Alabama, LSU, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, they're good, and Auburn is just a distant. Now they're 3-1, but what do you think right now makes one division better than the other?
Well, I still think the SEC West is deeper with more quality teams, but the gap is not nearly as big between those two as it used to be. Why? Because Georgia has raised the level of its program. Tennessee is getting better. Kentucky's getting better. Florida is going to get better. They're learning all along. South Carolina's not where I thought they would be, but it's still early, and Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. So
yeah,
right now the SEC West is still, but the SEC West is still stronger, but the SEC East is moving in that direction.
All right. When you think about the Auburn situation right now, if you saw any of that Auburn Missouri game, I don't know how good Missouri is. But I'm looking at Auburn. They're down to their 4th team quarterback right now. Where does Auburn hang their hat on? They're 3-1. It's better than being 0-4. They got LSU coming to town this weekend. Barnhart, he's under pressure. Everybody knows that. His buyout's $15 million. Tim Horton told me, my friend who played at Arkansas, coached at Auburn and Arkansas, he's at Air Force now. He said Frank Broyles told him and his dad years ago, if you've made the wrong hire and you know it, you got to get rid of the guy, no matter what it costs, because in the long run, it can be far more costly. I don't have anything personal against Barnhart, but I'm sitting here looking and going, the recruiting. You've got a generationally incredible year in the state of Alabama. 22 4-stars, 7 5-stars, and of the top 10 players in your state, Alabama, you're in on 2 of them, the 2 5-star kids at Carver and Montgomery. But in the top 30 overall, you've got the 15th and the 23rd player committed. You've got Clemson and Arkansas and Penn State coming in here and getting players. And then in Georgia, Auburn, you're a Georgia native. You know how it's played over there. Coach Dye used to say, if Georgia wants a kid in Georgia, it's hard to beat them out. But not all of them, they don't all want to go to Georgia. And I don't even see the effort being made or the results. What do you make? What do you draw from what's going on at Auburn right now? As an Auburn alum, I love my school. I'll never pull for them to lose. But I know they got to make a change because of what's going on with Georgia and Alabama. Otherwise, they're just going to fall away.
Well, and that's the decision that Auburn's going to have to make. What's the tipping point? Usually I would maintain to you, Rob, that if Auburn had found a way to lose that game, Missouri, if Auburn found a way to lose that game, that might have been the tipping point. Where does the tipping point come? They're going to play LSU. If they beat LSU, they're 4-1. Okay, with 2 wins in the SEC.
Yeah.
That's not a tipping point. Now you look at because they start with 5 straight home games, the back half of the Auburn schedule is brutal. But at what point do the scales get tipped towards making a change? And do you see them making a change if they beat LSU and go 4-1? You see them making a change on Sunday morning?
No, and that's
okay.
This is what I was going to ask you too. With the December signing period, that if you're making a coaching change, and when Auburn did that a couple of years ago with Gus Malzahn, because of the virus in 2020, he wasn't fired until Sunday, December 13th. Brian Harsin was not introduced to the media as Auburn's new head football coach until Christmas Eve. So they missed that December signing period. They got to sign guys in February, still finished 18th or 19th in the country, but that means you're like 10th in the SEC. There's no room. So is there a push that you're hearing about to get rid of the December signing period and go back to the one in February, because it kills schools, at least, that are making a coaching change?
No, the coaches like it too much. They get so much accomplished.
Yeah.
Well, the coaches of the good programs, they love the December signing period to get it out of the way so they can start recruiting juniors in January. So that's the truth.
Yeah. And we all know that Mac Browne started this out at Texas with getting everybody in February for the next year. And he started doing that. And then I think the problem was, and Jimmy's talked about this, that some of these guys, a lot of them, would not have the senior year because they already knew they had a scholarship. That's always the danger that you run into it. But I'm just looking at any school out there. If you're making a change, you run that risk. Yeah. What is the tipping point? Again, at Auburn, you're always measured by what you do against Alabama and Georgia, but you got to throw LSU in there. They're not playing Florida and Tennessee every year like they used to. So that is, I cannot pull for my school to lose as an alumnus of Auburn. But at the same time, I'm looking at what Georgia and Alabama are doing and saying, okay, we got to make some changes. I know Jimmy's going to be with us right after this quick break. More with Tony Barnhart and Mr. College Football on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne back here on this Monday Sidelines. And we talk a lot, but when you talk with someone who makes a lot of sense, like Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, who's a genuinely good man, it kind of calms you down a little bit. It's like talking to Bob Newhart. Tony, Jimmy Hodge jump in here with us right now. We're talking to somebody that's reasonable right now. So let's go.
Well, Tony, I wanted to ask you, these first 3 weeks, Georgia just ran roughshod over everybody, and they finally looked normal, on Saturday. They looked like most other Power 5 college football teams, when they're not on their A game, and except for Brock Bowers, of course. I mean, first of all, who do you compare this guy to, like Gronkowski? Or, we've just never seen a player in recent memory at the college level that is built like a tight end, but he's got, scat back speed, but yet he doesn't look that fast. His running form isn't the prettiest you've ever seen, but when he gets out in the open field, nobody ever seems to be able to catch him. I hadn't seen a player like this, and I can't even remember when.
Well, I talked to Todd Blackledge of ABC about him, and he said the thing about it is he's certainly more than a tight end, but he's got the ball skills, the catching ability, and the running ability of a great running back or a wide receiver. So there's really nobody quite like him. The credit, a lot of the credit, obviously he's very, very skilled, but give Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator at Georgia, a lot of credit. It's one thing to have a player like Brock Bowers. It's another thing to figure out ways to get him the ball in space. And they have done a really good job of it. It's the short outs. It's just literally handing him the ball on a jet sweep around the end. He is a special player. It was like two plays in the other day against Kent State. They just handed him the ball. He ran 75 yards with it. I mean, it's just he is just a phenomenal player, and he is part of what is literally the deepest tight end room in college football.
Yeah. Well, college coaches are always second guessing themselves, and they always are trying to find new ways to become more dangerous. And on the offensive side of the ball, guys like Monken are saying to themselves, how come it took me a year to decide to use him on jet sweeps, because they are always questioning themselves. They demand as much out of themselves as they do their players. And, but when you saw that, you're going, oh man, what else are they going to think of to try to get the ball to him, like in space and, and in similar situations? Because again, this guy is just, I don't even know how you describe him, except, he's almost unstoppable.
Tony, he reminds me a little bit of Peyton Hillis when Arkansas had him, but can you imagine if Peyton Hillis wouldn't have had to share the ball with Felix Jones and a guy named Darren McFadden? That's how good Brock. I have not seen. And again, Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert, out of that. How do these guys all get on the field? And that's the thing I said during the preseason about Georgia. They would use the tight ends as de facto wide receivers, but they're being used in better ways than that. Todd Monken, what is this, year 3 for him at Georgia? Because he is one hell of a coach, and he's going to be a head coach soon if he wants to be.
Yeah, he is going to be a head coach soon, and they've just done a great job offensively. I wrote this last week, guys, is that when it comes to weapons, this Georgia team has more weapons than the one that won the national championship. They're certainly using the weapons more than they had, and it's Bowers. It's they're deep at running back, which they always are, and some of the young receivers have looked pretty good. And oh, by the way, they've just basically told Stetson Bennett, Stetson, light it up, son. We're going to let you throw the ball a bunch. And from the day one, Stetson's been throwing the ball all over the place. And that if you already were trying to defend Georgia, and you look at Brock Bowers and you look at the running backs and you look at that offensive line, and then you say, now they're going to let the quarterback throw as much as he wants. Are you kidding me?
This running back room for Georgia has one of the most rich traditions of any school in America when it comes to that position. But this year, you've got McIntosh, but you don't have a whole bunch of, you don't have, 3 or 4 that we are familiar with to this point. But I'm with you. I think looking at Georgia preseason, I thought maybe there'd be 2 or 3 games when Stetson Bennett the fourth would be asked to go win it. Last year, he really wasn't, because the defense that was backing him was it was generationally incredibly just talented, 5 first-round picks. But I'm beginning to see, now granted, I know they gave up 22 points to Kent State, but I still think in games when Georgia's fully locked in, they are going to be so hard to beat. And what do you focus on against them? But again, Stetson Bennett the fourth, Tony, is it fair to say people make a mistake as fans projecting a guy, what he'll do in the NFL versus appreciating what he does in college?
Well, if you're projecting a guy was going to go in the NFL, you're looking at the wrong thing. That's not what college football is all about. It's about how do you play college football. Okay,
Yeah.
And Stetson Bennett has been absolutely remarkable, and the players love him. The guy's a great teammate, and again, with the way they came out smoking against Oregon, that told you what you needed to know about what Georgia's going to do this year. And they're saying, look, we're letting you know it. We're going to throw it. You want to stack up and stop the run? Be our guest, because we're going to throw over the top of you.
Yeah, I mean, and it is just so much fun to hear in message boards, discussions, whatever, people that criticize Stetson Bennett based on, well, he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. That doesn't matter. What matters is what he does at Georgia. And ask Buck Bellew what it means to be a national championship quarterback at the University of Georgia. I mean, I like Buck Bellew. We've had him on the show several times, and I think he's like saying, yeah, but these small town South Georgia guys, you're legends. And no, Brock Bowers is from California, but Stetson Bennett, I think about the people criticizing him, saying we got other quarterbacks in the quarterback room, and you're around that team. What's the chemistry on this Georgia team like compared to last year?
It's even better than it was a year ago. I mean, listen, the players. A wise coach once told me the players will tell you who the quarterback is. Okay, because the players know, and the players are very loyal to this guy because he has hung in there and hung in there and hung in there. And you know what? He gets them the ball. He gets them the ball in a place where they can catch it and make a move in open space. So I would say I would call the chemistry in this locker room really good.
Yeah, and it's just, I can't wait to read Lawrence Smith's book about last year's team, but I got a feeling if Lawrence Smith may have to go hide out again in such tough places as Sea Island and St. Simons to write another book. I mean, and I just, they got the right coach. Is the Kirby Smart fit at Georgia the best you can remember in terms of being a great coach, great PR guy, and next Galaxy recruiter?
Yeah, he's got all the tools. He checks all the boxes and understands, having worked for the guy in Tuscaloosa for 11 years, understands the nuances of what he knows what a great team looks like, because he coached on a bunch of them in Alabama. He said, someday when I become a head coach, I know what the building plan is. I know exactly how to build a national championship team. And this is the most important part, I can build a national championship program and I can sustain it. That is the key.
Yeah. Tony, I know you've got to get going. Let people know how they can follow you and read all your great content, because you really are the Bob Newhart of the media, because you're calming people down, because this Monday morning, I think a lot of angst and people saying, no, where do we go? But you give a great message, but you also provide a roadmap and break down what's happening, but the big picture of college football that you present and break it down. Thank you. But let people know how they can follow you, and appreciate your time this morning and look forward to your next visit.
Well, all of our written stuff, plus we now have a podcast called Mr. College Football and Friends. It's all on our website, which is part of the Sports Illustrated family. It's under the Sports Illustrated umbrella. You can get there at si.com/college/TMG. TMG stands for the media guides. And I'm on with three of my old newspaper buddies. We just sit around on the podcast and talk about college football. We have a blast, and all of us write for that. I write every Monday, 5 things I learned. That's up on the website right now.
All right, I'm going to be reading that as soon as I get off the air. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay, take care.
Okay, you too. Tell you one thing, Jimmy, breaking down, and you're talking about Brock Bowers. You hadn't seen anybody like him. I'm with you. I'm sitting here trying to say to myself, who is out there that we've seen in college football recently like Brock Bowers? And I can't compare to anybody but Peyton Hillis, the pride of Conway, Arkansas, when he was there. But again, he had to share the ball with Felix Jones and Darren McFadden. But when he was used in his role, Peyton Hillis, and of course, he played for the Denver Broncos in the National Football League for some time. But that's a tough one, man. Doug Dean.
Well, he wasn't a tight end. He
I
was
know.
used mainly in the slot and
yeah.
at running back,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Where the size that Bowers has just makes him so unique.
Yeah, and exactly. Just, I mean, I know Peyton was not a tight end. He was in that. They had those three in the backfield. That was a talented. But now Brock Bowers is scary good. Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, joins us right now in transit right now. And Doug, I tell you what, if you've calmed down from the elation of that Auburn 17-14 rugby scrum victory Saturday in the 11 a.m. timeout game against Missouri, we'd like to hear your thoughts on that game, if that's what you want to call
it. Yeah, well, there's cliches like that was a fluke win, or there's no such thing as an ugly win, and let me just tell it straight so that I don't damage my street cred on here. Rob and Jimmy, listening audience, football freaks, that was a fluke win by Auburn, and that was an ugly win by Auburn. But in 20 years, somebody will look back and say, yep, Auburn managed to beat Mizzou. Boy, your heart breaks in some ways, heart breaks for the running back, Pete, who didn't even have to reach the ball out to my eyes. He was going to, I think, break the pylon. And even if he didn't, Jimmy and I we've all three talked about the absence of situational awareness in a game, and that, Mizzou had already missed basically an extra point, 26-yard chippy. Mevis, he's probably been called Beavis more after that game, if you know what I mean. And if they get the ball with Auburn up 3 points and they're down at the 1 or 2 yard line, you like Mizzou's chances there to punch it in. But just to me, I'm happy for the fans that attended, the fans that enjoyed it. And I did. I'm never going to, like some of these idiots that say I was really rooting for Mizzou to win.
Never.
So that we could go ahead and cut ties with Harsin. I just let that play out naturally. Harson's going to be cut loose anyway. Let me just kind of short circuit any debate about that. And the reasons are twofold. The powers that be have seen enough. I don't think they have any confidence that he can turn it around as a recruiter here in the South. I think he's, whether you want to blame it on what Gus left in the cupboard, or you want to blame it on, that we're dysfunctional in our power structure, both of which have some truth. In the end, you've got to make hard judgments about, do we believe this guy has the chops in the entire profile to create enough excitement, and then once he's got talent, knowing what to do with it to position them to win. And when you go the entire second half and you can't muster any points against an opponent like Mizzou that is probably, along with Auburn and Vandy, bottom tier. I hate saying it, hurts to say that, bottom tier of the league at the moment. So I think Harson's gone. It's all about the choreography of, if he should lose, which I would expect this Saturday night. Hope Frank Duffy is tuning in. I'm not sandbagging tough. I just think LSU's ascendant. It will be interesting because I'm sure Jimmy's going to have to talk about voodoo at Jordan Hare. But barring some real serious voodoo, I look for Auburn to drop the next two, and the one in Athens could be ugly. So that's where we are, and pretty soon the discussion will be centering around short lists.
Well, I talk about two kinds of games in college football when it's going to be bad. CBS, Club and Baby Seals. The other one is the PBS, Public Beheading Series. That could be Athens. And I got that one from our good friend Gordon Ford, the mortgage banker, Milburn Drysdale's nephew.
Yeah.
But let me say this.
Hey, before you go on, Rob, I don't want to, you can have a mediocre game or a miserable game and still recognize individual great. Derek Hall played like a man possessed in that game.
Yes. I put out on Twitter, God, please make more Derek Halls. I love this kid.
He's got a chance to play on Sunday, perhaps.
And you know what? If you're so angry that you're pulling for Auburn to get beat, Go tell that to Derek Hall. I love that kid.
Yeah, no kidding.
I love that
Tell
kid.
it to Tank Bigsby, who
tell it to
had
Tank.
66 yards were after Tank finishes the game with 44. You think he wasn't having to work?
Yeah. And you know what? Every single game, who runs out of the tunnel onto the field at Jordan-Hare or wherever Auburn's playing, holding the American flag, it's Derek Hall. I love that kid. He embodies what's right about college football. And because I remember my friend that recruited him to come to Auburn, and I'm so glad that we have him. And I'll tell you what, Dylan Cardwell, basketball player down there on the field, he's Rodney, I think Rodney Garner's nephew. You when you see those kids, and they know that this team is struggling, but I got to say this, that Auburn student section, man, and I
was proud of him.
My son told me last year, he said, yeah, if you leave
they
early,
stuck around for a nothing game.
Yeah, they'll take away your block seating. Well, by God, they should. And it ought to be that way for the regular fans too. If you expect the team to play a full 60, you got to stay a full 60. We're going to talk more with Doug Dean, AU Dose, and Jimmy Hides right after this quick break. Thanks, everybody listening. Kicks 96.3, Alex City, Lake Martin, 680, all over. Sidelines. Be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
I'm not into cloning, but if I were a mad scientist, I would want to have a team full of Derek Halls and Tank Bigsby's. I mean, these guys are, when you hear about the term, the phrase or the term description of somebody as a warrior, that is Derek Hall. But I also think, Doug, Jimmy told me this over the weekend. He said, Rob, they found Auburn's offensive playbook. It was on a Post-it note somewhere.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean,
you got to let Jimmy comment. Was that the penultimate voodoo game, Jimmy?
Yeah, I said in our
I knew it.
Text chain that it was the Mount Everest of Auburn voodoo wins at Jordan-Hare. Yeah,
Jimmy,
it's all we got left.
The Missouri coaching staff, I don't know if they were shaving points or what. I mean, you have two different field goal attempts where you have guys jumping off sides, and on the first one, on the last play of the first half, you had two Missouri players that jumped off sides. And then they get the second opportunity. Carlson misses that one. And then in overtime, now how on earth is the nose tackle, who is lined up 6 inches from the ball, jump offside on a field goal attempt?
It was, well, and Carlson said he's not normally an excuse maker, so I hope it's not taken that way. But he said he thinks his biggest problem on the misses that he's got to correct, it's correctable, is tempo, because he sensed that Mizzou, I guess to their credit, but it's a gamble, they were trying to come fast, come early on the count, and it bit them that last time with Auburn getting the 3 points in overtime. But yeah, I agree. I honestly, on the one hand, you can't be too critical of Drinkwitz for just when they first got that big pass down to the Auburn 3. It's first and goal. I don't understand why you don't on first down at least try, let the quarterback play action and then bootleg it. It's very safe. You can still just go down, but it could be wide open and you walk in. But he said he would do the same thing again. I think there you try to score a touchdown and you don't put it in your kicker's hands, but you're supposed to make an extra point distance anyway.
Well, I'm glad he's not coaching any team that I like, because when you have the momentum that they had, you could see that whole sideline just totally energized. You got the ball first and goal at 3. If nothing else, you just run it up the gut 3 times.
Yeah.
And hope you score a touchdown, because, by doing that, you're running time off the clock, of course, but by scoring a touchdown, that means, that's the only way you can try to send the game in overtime if you're Auburn, is with a touchdown. And the way their offense was playing, or both offenses in the second half, that wasn't going to happen. And we found out this weekend, you can't rely on a kicker at the college level. And in a road situation at Jordan-Hare, the crowd really got into it. And I don't know.
They were kicking into the student section too.
Yeah. But to make it worse, though, in overtime, you have a running back that breaks open to the left side. And for once at this level of football, you see a running back carrying the ball in the correct arm, the outside arm. So he approaches that left sideline, turns up at about the 3 or 4 yard line toward the goal line, looks like he's going to score. And can anybody explain why he switches the ball from the correct arm to his inside hand and tries to reach out? And
yes,
fumbles
because
the
he's
ball.
right-handed and the human brain works that way.
Well,
but you played football long enough. The ball's in your left arm. You're just trying. You keep it secured against your body. You're at the goal line. I mean, he was going to score standing up anyway. And if you're going to reach the ball over the goal line, which we've seen in recent years, guys do that, you're going to do it with both hands secured on the ball. I mean, that is horrendous coaching. And for that to be allowed, it's just beyond.
And not only
belief.
that, and I appreciate your passion about it, because these coaches, and of course the coaches will say, "You believe me, we coach this 5 days a week," and at some point the players have, "I can explain it, I can't help you comprehend it." That's what they'll say. Back to the question of Drinkwitz's decision, when you're just fans like us and analysts, you get to second guess these coaches that make millions. But I think there's a big picture. By the way, I think Drinkwitz is going to work out in the long run, because his rebuild at Mizzou is bigger, arguably, than what Heupel, for example, has at Tennessee. But I think that the big picture is down at the 3 yard line, first and goal, a minute left. You want to run the clock anyway. You got a timeout, if I remember. And you can teach your players about seizing the game and taking it and winning it with brute force, and that pays dividends down the road, and just the character and toughness of a team. I'm reminded, with apologies to Jimmy because of his allegiance, the 2007 Iron Bowl in Auburn, in Jordan-Hare. It was Coach Saban's first year. Auburn had a lead, but a shaky lead. Alabama had, I think, just attempted an onside, and Auburn got it. And it comes to a 4th and 1. Do you just punt it there? You probably don't want to try a field goal that you get blocked. And they call a timeout, and the great Al Borges brings his offense over there, and he tells them, of course, he's got Tubbs' approval to go. He said, if you aren't good enough to push these guys back and get 1 yard, you don't deserve to win the game. And I think Drinkwitz had an opportunity to say basically that, I'm going to give you 2 downs to punch it in. If you don't, then we're going to position it for a field goal. That if you're not good enough to block this Auburn front, then you don't deserve to win. And on that play in the Iron Bowl, they not only blocked, Kenny Irons drug people about 12 yards to ice the game. So I don't know. Drinkwitz did it by the book, If they win it, then he's a genius. But I question the moment and the situational awareness.
Well, secondly, Doug, I mean, that tremendous catch that got them down there, like I said, that whole Missouri bench, their fans in that section of the stadium, I mean, they're delirious. They got this huge energy level, and Auburn, defensively, those guys are reeling, they're going, man, we got to come up with something here. And to not even attempt to run a play from scrimmage there, to me, I just don't know how you defend it. I really don't. Because again, you got nothing to lose. You run a straight ahead plunge, like I said, 3 times, and just with the running back just securing the ball with both arms, you got absolutely nothing to lose. But then I think when we get to that moment also, that was created by Auburn's decision not to go for the 4th and 1 and try the field goal. Well, first of all, I would have gone for the field goal because you can just about bet that Missouri would have jumped off sides,
Yeah,
I mean,
no doubt.
I mean, and then just getting stuff like they did created that possession in which Missouri went down the field and, just didn't win at the end, But the fact that neither team offensively in the second half played like they were interested in winning. I mean, a scoreless second half, and neither team showed any really, I guess
it took offense back about 30 years.
yeah, it really did. I mean, they just showed no ability to threaten the opposing defense. It was just, man.
You got to blame a lot on the offensive line, which is beating a dead horse. And if you need proof of it, this isn't linear, but I think it applies. I'm really happy for Bo Nix that he gets to experience being in the pocket with an actual clean pocket and able to throw the ball. And so what Gus did, not stocking and managing the O-line roster, is criminal. He probably should be he should get a show cause, guys, for incompetent offensive line recruiting roster management.
And it's also confirmation of Dillingham's development as an offensive coordinator when he has a head coach that allows him to, implement his philosophies on offense.
Let me say this.
Rob and Jimmy, because I think I know what's on most Auburn fans' minds. Of course, you want to salvage whatever kind of season you can, but I think I tend to believe that there was behind the scenes preparatory action that if Mizzou manages to win that game, which they should have 9 ways to Sunday, they're almost willing to give them a footnoted moral victory. But I think the issue that's on Auburn fans' minds is how is the timing and choreography of this firing going to work? When you look at the roster and team we've got, Harsin, it's like a 5% chance that he could win enough games to change minds. So that takes us to not the names on the short list. That there's time for that later. But to me, you've got to look at what is the strategic landscape for Auburn football as we consider coaching changes. And to me, what's so critical to understand is Coach Saban, with the dynasty they built at Alabama, it's up to him if he wants to coach 5 more years or 10 more years, which gets on up there. But you have to say that he's inside of a window that you've got to consider. There's not a long window of opportunity to be in position and getting things rolling while Alabama is going to eventually go through that disruption. Georgia fans would say, I'm glad we're stuck with Kirby Smart. The detractors might say, well, the problem is you're stuck with Kirby Smart. Right now, the smart money is on Georgia will become a dynasty themselves. I think it's premature to call that because soon the Georgia will probably be matched by 10 or 15 teams in the NIL money game. So recruiting the way they have might become more difficult. The other strategic part Auburn's got to think about, there's probably 1 or 2 more years of Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M if he turns it around, then they're stuck with him for good or bad. But Auburn really doesn't need to be in the coaching hiring market the same time A&M is. That would help. And finally, you've got to consider that talent has been allowed to slip so badly that I don't think we can afford to hire a kind of an up and coming coordinator that doesn't generate excitement. And with that idea in mind, you're going to hear Auburn fans, and they already are, really pushing for a super high risk but potentially high reward Deion prime time gamble. I'm not quite to that point, but I understand where they're coming from and the criticality of restocking the roster with some elite players.
All right. Now, got a question from a viewer on this morning show, Kerry Jones. Who are the candidates for Auburn head coach? Before I get to that, and I'm going to answer that, but give you my picks. I think the only debate coming out of the Auburn game besides was how long will Harsin last is which was worse, 3-2 or this game. We all remember 3-2 in 2008.
Yeah, that was 08.
That was set football back about 50 years. Saturday's game was just pitiful. And it is the product of just absolute chaos in coach. And you've got your talent level. Our friend Chuck Oliver, Southern Sports Today, said it early on. He cannot remember the talent gulf between Auburn and Alabama being this wide in the last 40 years. How does that happen? Auburn, no excuse. You're about to open a $91 million football-only facility. What do you lack? I mean, you've got everything in position to win. You've got what you had here, in my opinion, is an athletic director at Auburn who got mad that another coach was trying to be, coup or whatever, put on as the head coach. And he got mad and said, I'll show y'all, and went out and hired a guy from left field. So it started. Stephen Leith
set in motion more disasters than have been accounted.
He puts Alan Green in there just to be his man in the athletic department, okay? And then when he was thrown out, which was 23 months too long on the job, 1 minute was too long, then you have the mess there. And if Auburn doesn't make the right pick at athletic director, there's some good ones out there. I'm for John Hartwell. I mean,
he is getting serious attention, Rob.
Yeah, you've got to have somebody. You talk about having a rock star as a football coach. You better get it right as an AD, because there's more to Auburn and Alabama and Georgia and everybody than just football. You got to get all the sports right. And if you're not competing in the top 3 or the top 4 in every sport, you need to look at the coaches that you have coaching those sports. And you cannot have this woe is me and this Horatio Alger. Auburn is just this little. No, they're not. It's a $180 million athletic budget. Inexcusable to have this mess that you have right now. So,
when you're ready, I've got the decoder ring on the next hire.
Yeah. Here's what I wanted to ask you, because Kerry Jones, and I've got a lot of people texting me saying, who are some candidates? Now, I know we've heard some names, but you got to have someone who's the right fit. Is it Todd Monken at Georgia?
I don't think so. You got to have somebody familiar with the culture. The two names that come to mind for me, and again, I think he's spent enough time. I don't know if that this would come from higher up in the NCAA show cause, but I think Freeze would be, certainly prominent, because again, he wins everywhere he's gone. Beaten Bama 2 years in a row. During his time at Ole Miss, and his offenses score points. Yeah, and he's familiar with the league.
Doug, who were some names that you've got?
Well, and Jimmy's not wrong. I think one of the things that Freeze hurt him, so he was getting completely washed in the baptismal waters and forgiven, and then he unfortunately starts DMing a young woman who had accused of sexual assault. So you have to consider, is there a worry about his judgment on and off the field? But he can damn sure coach. And I've had a prominent former Auburn assistant I talked to the other day who's a real advocate of Freeze, that he would be the guy. But here's before I give a name, to me, Rob, I've been thinking about this a lot. And when Auburn has had monster seasons, I can argue that because of the power of Alabama's brand and how they do it right most years, and Georgia, Auburn has somehow or another shifted the entire paradigm.
Doug,
Kane,
hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break because I want you to finish this. We got plenty of time. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. Yep. Doug Dean, AU Dose on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Doug Dean, you were on a roll before the break.
Yeah, let me try to continue to roll. What I'm driving at is we can't try to beat out Alabama at how they play football. Not just schematically, but thinking that you can, match or beat Alabama in signing top 2 or 3 classes for 5 years running. That's challenging at Auburn for a lot of reasons. So back to the paradigm shift. There's a notion that when you shift the paradigm about how things work, that everyone else goes back to zero. And that happened under Coach Dye. Arguably what happened was you hadn't had that kind of physical, mental toughness built on a team to the point where a third of the team quit in 1981 when Dye had his first year. And then go forward, Tuberville shifted the paradigm. In his own way. Early on, he was a riverboat gambler, and he built some bravado. He was uniquely good at finding these 3 stars that would blow up. But the big paradigm shift was Gus, and Gus is much maligned, but there's no question that hurry up, no huddle, and not that Gus invented it. Kevin Sumlin really had it going with Johnny Football a couple of years, but that gave our arch rivals a lot of problems when you could get the talent in there. And it's at the heart of why that 2010 team ascended the mountaintop. So if you can answer the question, what kind of personality and by the way, it was Dye's persona more than anything that was a difference maker and shifted the paradigm to the point Bama fans did not want Pat Dye coaching at Auburn. And that's a good sign. So you might ask yourself, who is on the approved head coaching list for Alabama? And do not give those guys an interview. And because I think Hugh Freeze could possibly shift the paradigm with the way he demands detail and he really produces offense. Lane Kiffin could do it. Deion Sanders could shift the paradigm in recruiting. You'd have to worry about his, understanding the total profile of the job. And then if you want to make a less exciting hire, I would have Jeff Grimes on the list if you could make sure that you spend the money to get him 2 very elite coordinators. But there's just not a can't miss out there at the moment.
Yeah, and people, I know Jimmy's talked a lot about Lance Leipold, who won 8 Division III national titles, a couple of MAC championships. He's got Texas right now. Kansas right now at 4-0. They beat Duke the other day. And
he's got the resume. That would be a scary hire just because he doesn't know the South.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the deal. You're seeing right now what happens when you bring someone from the Pacific Northwest down here to recruit. Again, it's like having a Quaker as your Secretary of Defense. I mean, it's just very difficult. And that's the problem is that Harsin, how's it going to work? I mean, it's hard to change someone when they're 45 years old from being the way they are. And I'm looking, again, these numbers just scream loudly of the mess that Auburn's dealing with right now. But you've got 22 four-star recruits in the state of Alabama this year, 7 5-stars. And you are in on 2 of the top 10, the 2 5-star kids at Carver and Montgomery. And then you've got the number 15 player, Jeremiah Cobb, running back in Montgomery, number 23 player. You had one of the top players, Carmelo English, wide receiver from Phoenix City Central, but he decommitted a couple of weeks ago. Why? Well, if you're a wide receiver and you're looking at Auburn's offense, which is on a stone tablet or a post-it note, I mean, I hate to say it, but my goodness, you gotta think, Doug, look, we're about out of time. We're going to go to Tommy Kane in Atlanta, but closing thoughts on any other. Well, let me just say this. If these guys don't know what pot liquor is, swamp cabbage, and don't understand about the South, Browne Harson's a drag racing fan. He doesn't hunt fish. You better get a guy that fits that profile of a Southern man.
You know, it's weird that I mentioned Jeff Grimes because he's on that 2010 Auburn staff that won it all. And I didn't mean to skip past his boss, Dave Aranda. If you can get Dave Aranda, you sure as hell can defend that hire. Look at his pedigree. He was at LSU. He knows the South. He seems to be a tough-minded coach. He might fit at Auburn. And there's, no less than 5 or 10 other names. But much like Heupel at Tennessee, Napier at Florida, they're gambles. Agree? It looks good so far for both of those, but they're gambles, and Auburn's probably going to have a gamble.
Yeah. So, I mean, Josh Heupel's from South Dakota. Heisman runner-up at Oklahoma on the 2000 national championship team that beat Florida State. But you're right. They're gambles. But you better get somebody that knows the South. You've got to know your audience. And if you don't understand that, like Kevin Skarbinski said the other day, every word out of Nick Saban and Kirby Smart's mouths is related to recruiting. It's what everything is. I mean,
it's not like this dreaded task like cutting your yard, cutting your lawn.
If you're the coach at Auburn or Alabama or Georgia, you're like somebody that has a chain of seafood restaurants. You are out recruiting. You've got your people out in the Gulf every day, shrimping, getting the oysters, getting the fish every single day. When a hurricane comes, well, as soon as it calms down, you're right back out there. But you never stop it. And this part-time stuff and missing the Georgia High School Football Coaches Convention is like not cooking food and serving it. I mean, you can't do it. It is the most egregious mistake in the modern era of Auburn football. If you don't understand how, Doug, you're right. Look, this is going to be, we'll get you back on later in the week. But
thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Thank you, man. You make so much sense. It's very good having Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, and Bob Newhart, and then Doug Dean. And now we go to Tommy Kane, another sensible guy over in Atlanta, who, NC State alum, played a little basketball there, ACC Network, ACC road trip. And Tony Barnhart and Doug have kind of set the stage right now. We're going to hand the ball off to you, but great stuff every time you're on. That Clemson Wake Forest game, and Jimmy and I, and we talked about it with everybody on the roundtable Saturday morning. Man, the ACC, that was an exciting game. That's Wake Forest 2 weeks in a row going to the last minute. I mean, they're 1-1 in those games. What do you take away from this game? How good is Clemson? How good is Wake Forest?
Great to be back on the show, guys. What a great weekend of college football. Just awesome. The Clemson Wake Forest game was a shootout for sure. DJ finally looked like the DJ that we've been wanting to see all year. Really had the offense clicking there in the second half and then in the overtime. And Wake Forest, hats off to them. Look, I don't know the numbers, but if you want to talk about 4 stars, 5 stars, or what on either side of the ball, whatever. I mean, Clemson's loaded like an Alabama or, those guys are. Wake Forest doesn't have that many of those, high school big-time recruits on that team. So for them and for Coach Clausen to have that team ready to play and play a game like that and take the number 5 team in the country into overtime was just awesome. It was a great game. Good atmosphere there in Winston-Salem. But Wake Forest is no joke. I mean, they're a good football team. They're 21 in the country. This week they got Florida State, who just cracked the top 25. So that'll be another good test with Florida State coming in at 4-0, which is a huge surprise for most everybody. I mean, nobody really thought Florida State would be, where they are right now, which is it's good for the ACC to see them back in the top 25, but a good matchup there. And then, of course, next Saturday, college game day in Clemson, South Carolina, and 7:30 primetime ABC game, NC State and Clemson. That'll be the game of the year in the ACC.
Yeah, and it will. And I think it is fair to say at this point, in year 3 of the reclamation project at Florida State, Mike Norvell is way ahead of Mario Cristobal in year 1 at Miami. Lots of people jumped on the bandwagon early after stunning victories by Miami over Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. And the U is back. And then they go and they just basically drive a used Edsel out there to A&M, get beat 17-9. And then the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders just took out a 55-gallon drum of whoop arse on them.
I mean, what was that? I mean, They gave up points. Gave up 45 points to Middle Tennessee State. Come on, Miami. That's just – and, their quarterback was all hyped up throughout the year. He hasn't done much. I mean, but what a disappointing loss for Miami. It just cracked into the – had been in the top 25 all year and just – come on. You can't let that happen. You just can't.
Well, and I look around top to bottom. I still think that we're very naive if we look at what happens in bowl games. And that's what we use as a barometer. This conference is better than that conference. Now, like Tony Barnhart, I asked him this question on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the best, the top of the Power 5. He had the SEC 1, obviously the Big 10 2, and the ACC, the Big 12 fighting it out for 3rd. And in the Pac-12, they are just circling the drain and just gasping for air. That's just they have got to. They're I don't know how much longer we're going to call the Pac-12 a Power 5 conference at the rate they're going, because it is. And I know Southern Cal and UCLA are going to the Big 10, but that's a mess. But how would you rank the conferences nationally?
Whew, man, you gotta go with the SEC 1 right now. Georgia had a tough little go of it this weekend. I don't want to say tough, but they, it was surprising to see them give up as many points as they did. So I think Georgia's still the cream of the crop, and then Alabama's right there behind them, obviously. So I think the SEC, you can't argue them being, number 1 in the land with Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky at number 8. Come on, Kentucky, like that program alone has just really raised the whole level of SEC play, because they were kind of the longest time was like the Kentucky and Vanderbilt team was always like on the back end of the conference. So SEC 1 for sure. Big 10, you got to go up there. With 2, and then I would put ACC a little closer there. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend. This weekend will be a big telltale. Like if NC State can go into Clemson and win that game, then that really solidifies them as a national power this year. It really does. You're talking about 5-0, having beaten Texas Tech, who then, after we beat them, they would go down and beat Texas. So that was huge for NC State to kind of take that extra step into the top 10 where we are now at number 10. So we'll see what happens this weekend with the ACC. But, now that we're past all the quote unquote cupcake games and all that junk where you play the teams you're supposed to beat by 30 points and you're in conference play, we'll see how it all shakes out. But, SEC is right now is by far and away, I think, the best conference in the country, and will be for a while, as they have been. So
well, and Friday night I watched it, and I know Jimmy and you did probably Syracuse and Virginia.
Yeah,
the Orange they're 4-0, and 4-0's 4-0.
That's right.
So Babers, he's had one good year, and he's off to a good start right now. But I just love, and Jimmy is really good about watching these games that other people aren't watching. But
yeah.
But they matter. And Jimmy, jump in here in this conversation with Tommy Kane over in Atlanta talking ACC. But again, I'm kind of like someone when I drive around and I see fields where the corn's growing tall, the rice looks good, and the beans look good. That makes me happy. I love seeing college football good all over the country. Jimmy, you do too. And Tommy, I guarantee you do as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'll say this: Clemson is not where they were, 3 or 4 years ago.
That's
with
right.
those national championship teams. I mean, they've got a lot of issues, and just to be truthful, the difference in that Wake Forest game was that virtually every Clemson touchdown was scored on an alley-oop, back shoulder fade type throw to a 6'3" receiver being defended by a 5'9" cornerback. It was just a mismatch. I mean, on just every time they threw the ball into the end zone. And I think that NC State really matches up well just physically and talent-wise to Clemson. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they came down there and won, because, again, Clemson, in my mind, they don't beat teams anymore during warm-ups. When you look to the other side of the field and, oh, man, look at those guys. They look like an NFL team. That isn't the case anymore. Opposing teams in the ACC know that if we go out there, execute, and focus on every play, we got a shot to beat these guys.
Yeah.
And so I think Clemson now realizes that there are 4 or 5 teams in this league that actually think they can beat them. And Florida State is still a year or 2 away, but I think it's really critical how they have been able to come out of the gate at 4-0 by winning some close games, because they need that type of confidence when you get in those type games, instead of hoping you can win them, knowing you're going to win them because you've won a couple of those before. And then Travis is a really nice player for them at quarterback, and the quarterback position is so critical. And let me tell you something, man, the job Dave Elko's done at Duke is something else. That Kansas Duke game was a quality Power 5 game. And this Riley Leonard, that redshirt freshman quarterback Duke has, is a budding superstar. He is an outstanding player. So Duke is now a team you got to watch out for. So, you just never know in college football. I saw an interesting comment. I think it was by Andy Staples. I mean, how can you predict anything week to week in college football when 80% of the players in the sport that are the difference makers aren't old enough to rent a car? But yet, at the same time, you got Hendon Hooker and Stetson Bennett that are 24 years old. I mean, you got the whole gamut, of players in college football, and it's so unpredictable. I mean, think about this. I mean, 9 days ago, you had Tulane coming to Manhattan, Kansas, and upsetting Kansas State. And then 2 days ago, that same Tulane team loses to Southern Miss. I mean, you have just all kinds of crazy outcomes like that. And again, the one thing about having young players, a lot of these guys don't know the history of the schools in their league and all that these teams are supposed to be good every year because of their history and all. They don't care about that stuff. They're just going to line up and play football every week.
Tommy, I want to get into that more because we're about to have to take a break. But that, again, history, traditions, heroes. Army, you get about 10 hours of Army history and basic training. The Marine Corps, you get about 100 hours. You've got to teach these kids their history and why this stuff matters. And people think, well, they don't care. They do. And you're carrying on big time. Tradition, it matters. And if you don't think it matters, when you lose, it's all you got. We'll be right back to talk about it after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, Tommy, again, talking about tradition and how this stuff matters. NC State and Clemson, that will be a huge game. And that's a chance for the ACC to showcase what they have on the national stage. You're going to have Clemson right now is in the top 5. NC State, look, there are a lot of undefeated teams, and you're right. Getting the cupcake games out of the way. Florida State's already they're 4-0. This is the, to me, it's starting to shape up like it could be a good season for the ACC. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, it really could. I mean, you mentioned Syracuse is playing well, and Florida State being in the mix. I mean, now everybody's going to start beating up on each other, but it's just a matter of two of like who can kind of sustain week to week and not lose if let's just say, like, being an NC State fan all my life, I could tell you, like, if I would be a betting man, I would say, oh, we could beat Clemson. Let's say we beat Clemson. We go on and play. Then I think we got Wake Forest and Florida State, back to back after that. And then we go to play Syracuse. We could lose. We could be undefeated, go to Syracuse and lose and get blown out. I mean, that's just the way it works. And being an NC State fan, like, we have to sustain that level of play all throughout the year because there's really no easy game left on the schedule when you start thinking about, oh, well, Syracuse, they're not that good. Well, yes, they are this year. They're pretty good. Wake Forest can score points in bunches. Florida State proving that they're pretty good. So, you're looking across the schedule now, and you earmarked this Clemson game all year, and it's setting up the way you wanted it to, with both teams being undefeated. Top 10. First time, guys, they've been playing for 90 years. The first time these two teams have met, both being ranked in the top 10. So, it's a huge game for both schools, but it ain't going to be over after Clemson. You got Wake Forest, Florida State, and Syracuse all coming up. So it's tough. It's a tough road for the Wolfpack, but we'll see what happens. And another thing to keep an eye on for this weekend, guys, is this Hurricane Ian that's coming up through the Gulf, right? And he's going to come up through the Gulf. Literally could roll right up through Georgia and parts of South Carolina, North Carolina through this weekend and stuff like that. It could turn all these games into just a wet, running, fast, no throwing or whatever, and it could change the outcome of all these games. Who can really win the trenches? Who's got the better running game, and who can execute in a torrential downpour? It could very well become the storyline of the whole weekend. So,
well, it is going to become the storyline, I think, in the whole week. Looking at the projections, although we don't know where Jim Cantori is right now. He was in Auburn Saturday before the Auburn-Missouri game. God, but the Grim Reaper was there.
Well, it turned out to be an accurate place.
Yes, it was.
That was crazy.
But the Grim Reaper was there with him. But anyway, Tommy, you're right. I'm looking at the projections. Meteorologist Rob Browne taking a look here at this cone. It could go this way. I mean, it looks like Tampa, they're getting ready for a just massive storm surge. But that thing, when it gets up on land, we all know it'll just sit there and dump rain literally for days. And you're not talking 2 or 3 inches. You can be talking 10 to 15 or 20 inches. And that changes everything. And if it's not thundering and lightning, they're going to be playing football.
That's right. My wife and I have tickets to the State Clemson game on Saturday night. And, we were looking at the weather this morning. We were both like, oh man, this could be just for the fans too. It could take away some of that home field advantage if half the stands are empty because it's a downpour. So it'll be interesting to see. And, you're thinking about, okay, well, who's got the better offense and defensive lines? Because it's going to be, or could just be running the ball every other play. And, it could be all low scoring and take all the wind out of some of these sails and some of these offenses that are finally getting clicking. So it'll keep an eye on the storm and we'll see how it goes.
All right, Tommy, I got to stop you. I was raising my hand here. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you just said it. Who's got the better offensive and defensive lines? That's been Clemson's problem They don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a great offensive line.
They don't.
And if NC State's got the better one, and it's going to be raining, just how much we don't know. It just depends on the main track of that hurricane.
Yeah, that's right. And we've got our linebacking core across the middle there is one of the best, if not the best in the country. We're just stacked. I mean, a couple of guys that were injured last year, and they came back this year to play. And Peyton Wilson, some guys that, he led the ACC in tackles the year before last, and then got hurt last year, didn't play all of last year, but he's back. I mean, we've got the linebackers to play with Clemson. I think we've got the speed on the defensive end. It's just a matter of it's going to be won or lost in the trenches, as they say, and if you're talking about a rainy game, then that's what you're going to be looking at. You won't see a lot of, stats from the quarterbacks of DJ or Dennis or Leary putting up 200-300 yards passing if it's pouring rain. It's just not going to happen. And so you're going to talking about maybe some toss sweeps and some stuff like that at the most, maybe some quick, screen passes, whatever, but you probably won't see any deep balls or anything like that. So it'll be a different game. So
now that's the next question. NC State, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they get the win Saturday at Death Valley because of the offensive line. And Clemson, everybody's waiting for Clemson to be Clemson 2018. I don't see it.
No.
We talked with our friend Richmond Weaver, who covers Clemson. Well, we talked to him a lot. Nothing against, I'm saying NC State, this is their biggest opportunity to jump up on the national stage, because last year when they didn't get to play in the bowl game, that against UCLA,
that's
because
right,
so many guys with the virus, that was an opportunity for them to have one of their best seasons in school history. I think Clemson, they got the win, double overtime at Wake Forest. Tommy, I think the Wolfpack, this game, this is a gigantic opportunity for them to say we're for real, because they beat Clemson last year, obviously at Carter Finley Stadium in
right,
double overtime.
Right.
But I just think NC State is I think they're better this year.
We are better. I think we are better than the team we had last year. I really do. We've defensively, we're better. We had a lot of guys come back, and like I said, we got the returning players that were hurt last year. So defensively, I think we're back. And Clemson, on their defensive side of the ball, they were missing 3 players in their secondary this past weekend versus Wake Forest. They had two defensive backs and 1 safety that were hurt, so they were a little banged up. So we'll see if they come back this week, but that could play a role too. But defensively, I don't want to jinx it, but defensively, I think we're fine against Clemson. They don't scare me. DJ had a good game this past week, but I've watched him play every game this year, and he's just not of the caliber that they've had the past couple of years with quarterbacks. We all know that. So if we can get to him and make him have to, run a little bit and put some pressure on him, that'll help a lot too. But defensively, I think NC State's going to be fine. But you're right. The biggest game in NC State's schedule and the way it's setting up that we've had in, I would say probably the last time we were ranked number 10 in the country was 2002. So it's been a long time, this is the biggest game. If we can go in the Death Valley and win that and really crack into the lower part of the top 10 and prove ourselves. And then, but like I said, guys, then you got to step up and play the next week. It's Florida State. Then you got to step up the next week. And I believe it's Syracuse. And then, so it doesn't get any easier. So, but Clemson, national TV, ABC, 7:30, game day there. It is a golden opportunity for the Wolfpack to really put themselves on the map this year.
All right. Now, first coach to probably be given his exit papers in the ACC.
Oh, boy. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, right there in your backyard.
Right down the street.
Right down the street. And
it's already happened.
They're
going to announce his firing this morning.
Yeah, it's
done.
And I heard that the respirator was on, the priest was at the bedside, and they were calling the kin folks to say goodbye.
Yeah.
You've got to put an end to it, Tommy. And Jimmy's right. Here's the thing. It's not like Jeff Collins. We're going to have to get a GoFundMe page to get food over there and clothes for the youngins. He'll walk away with millions in a buyout. This is different now when coaches are fired. But you can't continue to keep driving down the road to hell. That it is so bad at Georgia Tech, and they have money. My friends in Atlanta that know the Tech landscape. That's why I'm asking you this, because you are there. Tell me this all the time. They say, look, Georgia Tech fans are so tired of this. A lot of them are holding back with giving.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, I think that's across the board, right? Everybody gets tired of all the crap and constantly losing every year and not seeing any improvement. Why would I keep giving money to a sinking ship, right? I mean, so there's no question. I think that's happening, but I think that happens around the country when your team's not performing well, and then when they are performing well, then everybody wants to give because they want to be a part of it. But Georgia Tech is just in a really bad situation. I think I told you guys this last time we talked, or one time we talked. I went to the first game of the year in the Mercedes-Benz to Clemson, Georgia Tech, and after the first half, I was like, "Whoa, Tech looks pretty decent this year." They're playing some good defense. They were holding Clemson, and then you kind of look back and you're like, "Well, Clemson really wasn't clicking either much that game." But I'm really disappointed in how Tech has performed the last couple of weekends. I mean, UCF just rolled them 27-10. I mean, come on, man! Like you can't. You're Power 5 conference. They need a change. They need a change, and they need it drastically. Look, at the end of the day, is a new coach going to come in right now and turn this program and get them some wins this year and change the culture? No, because I just don't think they have the players in order to compete this year, and that comes down to the recruiting side of it. So, nobody really knows the true heartbeat or this pulse of a team unless you're in practice every day, you're in the war room with them every day, you're in the film sessions with them every day. Like, are those kids bought in or are they not? From the outside looking in, I would say they're not bought in at all. So that could be the problem. Maybe a new coach will at least get them to buy in, and they could at least get a couple good wins. But I think it's going to come down to a couple of years of rebuilding with recruiting and everything else. And it's a tough world here, and living in Atlanta with the success right down the road in Athens and Georgia for them to recruit in the state of Georgia. So I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, and
I'm surprised Tech didn't make the move last week after that performance against Ole Miss, because that wasn't even competitive. And you're right, in that opener against Clemson, it was a 7-point game going into the fourth quarter, and they actually had DJU sacked. And right before he got to go down, they saw Shipley and just shoveled it to him for about a 25-yard gain. And Clemson ended up scoring a touchdown and then blew the game open at that point. But when I watched Tech that night, they looked pretty good, and then that just took the air out of them. But also, I wouldn't be surprised to see if Tech might also make a change at athletic director too, because I think they're having the press conference this morning, and it's a done deal. In fact, multiple sources were reporting it last night.
Yeah, and Tommy, that begs the question: who will who will make the remarks about firing the coach if they fire everybody? Because they need Todd Stansberry is the worst athletic director. I mean, he's not that he's Canadian, but he doesn't get it.
Yeah,
he's been there a while, and he's got to go.
Yeah. I think it's it might just be one of those times when they just overhaul everything, and just say, hey, let's just start over and start fresh and get going. But I agree with you. There's going to be some changes made. There's no doubt about that, and it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. Who knows, man? But I feel for the Georgia Tech fans. I have a bunch of friends of mine that are season ticket holders, and I don't even think they go to the games, much less they can't even sell the tickets if they try. So,
well, Tommy, here's a question from Artemis Pyle, one of our listeners down in Jacksonville, Florida. What a great name, Artemis Pyle. Yeah. He says, I don't believe Georgia Tech is actually interested in major college football. Do you see them leaving and going to another conference because of their lack of emphasis and being serious about winning, not just in football, but in all sports?
Wow.
Artemis is tough this morning, man.
That's a tough question. that's not holding back. I disagree with that. I think Georgia Tech has got they've got some history there, especially on the basketball hardwood. I mean, they've had some great teams. I mean, some Final Four teams. They've Bobby Cremins and the legend of that and all that stuff. And they've had some good teams, and Pastner's done a pretty decent job with them and over the past couple of years. And it's just I think from a football standpoint, they I think the fan base is hungry, obviously, for them to be successful. And look, it is a tough place to recruit because the academic standards are quite high at Georgia Tech, and there's not like you can come in here and get like a communications degree like I got at NC State, where it's you don't have to take any math classes, you don't have to do any sciences and all that stuff.
Hey, now you're talking my language.
That's
hey.
it, buddy. That's what I'm saying, right? Went into NC State and I said, what classes, what kind of degree can I get where I don't have to take any math classes? And they say communications. I was like, I'll do that. But Tech is a tough academic school. But then again, there's a lot of culture around the school, around the city, and stuff for young athletes to come in and be a part of the big city life and professional teams right down the road and professional football and NBA right here and everything else. So it's got the big city kind of atmosphere. I would love to see him get back to playing well. I mean, Joe Hamilton's on the great quarterback that was there's in the College Football Hall of Fame. Now he's on the radio every morning here in town. Yeah. And he's a great listen. And, they've had some great players come through there. I mean, Calvin Johnson. I mean, they've had some amazing guys that are like Hall of Fame kind of players. So there's no reason to think that they're throwing the towel in, so to speak. I just think they got to get, like you said, maybe it starts with the athletic director. You got to get somebody in there that's passionate about college football and wants to make it a priority. And once they do, I think they'll be okay.
Well, Josh Pastner and Gus Malzahn have a lot in common. Both of them supposedly don't cuss a lot and stuff, and they're both Mr. Rogers type of guys. But you get what you get with Mr. Rogers. I want Gunnery Sergeant Hartman from Full Metal Jacket as my football coach. I got your name. I got your number. It will not survive. I want that tough mentality. But look, my take on Georgia Tech is I'm very familiar with their history. Jimmy is, you are. A lot of my parents' friends growing up were Tech fans, some of the best people I've ever known. And I know a lot about their history and tradition. They have that's what makes me, and I'm not a Georgia Tech alumnus or fan, but it makes me mad that they're just squandering all of that. And they have wealthy, Tommy, in Atlanta, the Georgia Tech alums. I mean, these people have strong balance sheets. That's what makes me so mad that they've let it get to this point. I mean, they've waited until the house is fully engulfed in flames and, let me go try to buy some fire insurance. Now they got to do a rebuild. What it is in the real estate business, it's a tear down. That's what you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to get people in there and get it going, because they have incredible tradition. And I wish they did have those games, but when they're in the ACC, they can't really do it. But Tommy, if you can, got a few more questions after this break, because you've got a great insight into it. And I know Jimmy wants to jump back in with it as well, but we're going to talk more ACC, SEC, college football on Sidelines after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Browne back with Jimmy Hodge and Tommy Kane over in Atlanta. I think the only holdup on getting rid of Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech is it going to be they need the wire instructions, an ACH, or just a regular paper check for the buyout. But I don't know what the buyout is. But again, Tommy, it makes you madder than a wet hen as a fan of any school when you see the money that is spent and you see the product on the field. I mean, you keep going and buying the best groceries, Now, granted, they can't keep their best players. Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, where'd he go? He transferred to Alabama, and they got to fix the bleeding. But if you can't win, and they're not the only school with high academic standards, and Jimmy will tell you what 7 or 8 of the 14 schools in the ACC are in the top 40 schools in America. So don't use that as an excuse. Look, calculus, you got to take it. Okay, I never took calculus. My dad did. Said I couldn't practice architecture 1 second till I passed calculus, so the governor would sign my diploma. And since 1954, practicing architecture, he tells me daily I've never once used calculus. but you gotta have it. I mean, Grant Field, Bobby Dodd Stadium, 4 or 5 national championships, multiple SEC championships. They won in the ACC. Tommy, do the Georgia Tech people that you know in Atlanta, do they care? That's what matters.
Yes, they care. I think they care. Of course they care. You know, everybody wants.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. But I'm saying, do they care? I mean, they've got to be frustrated because I know plenty of Tech people, and they're going, they don't seem to listen to us, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you know, again, I don't know what happens there with the communication back and forth between the fans and the school and the giving and all that stuff, but. Of course they care. I mean, Bobby Dodd Stadium's a great place on a Saturday to watch a game with the backdrop of the city right there, and
yes,
you know the stadium's right on the middle of campus, and you can walk everywhere. It's just a good atmosphere, and it's a great atmosphere when it's rocking. You know, they just got to put the product on the field, and it's you know it's just not always easy, right? I mean, you got to in order to get especially in today's day and age, with all the transfer portal and everything else, but to get a squad to be up to the level of play where, you know, especially right now in the ACC, because ACC is, like we said, I mean, there's top 10 teams now in the ACC left and right, and to compete against that, you know, that's one thing, but you got to beat the teams you put on the schedule at the beginning of the season. Yeah. But I was just reading an article. Between the break. And I was like, holy smokes, I haven't thought about this. When you talk about coaching candidates, the number one coaching candidate, prime-time Deion Sanders coming back to Atlanta where he found his glory on the gridiron. Could you imagine? Prime-time coming up from Jackson State, coming up here to coach the Georgia Tech. You're talking about getting put back on the map really quick?
Yeah.
Really quick. Like, you're instantly getting top recruits. You're instantly getting – you know, some great athletes to come play for him. I guarantee he would probably get half his team to come with him from the transfer portal. All the guys that are good enough to play in the ACC would come right away with him if they brought him in. That could be interesting. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, they've got deep pockets. And Jimmy, I know you got another question for Tommy. Tommy, appreciate you staying a little bit long with us, but sure. You give such great insight. We got to keep you on as long as we can. Maybe you'll be why not make you the AD at Georgia Tech? But I digress, Jimmy.
Yeah, well, Deion, I mean, would be a really interesting choice because from a marketing standpoint, that would give them a lot of opportunities. I'm just skeptical after 1 season and 4 games, you know, at Jackson State. I think it might be a little thin from a head coaching resume. You know, Bill O'Brien, you know, was offensive coordinator there during the O'Leary years, which were very successful. And nobody can overlook the job that O'Leary did those 2 years. Not O'Leary, O'Brien did at Penn State after the Sandusky fiasco. If not for the job he did those 2 years, Penn State would not be where they are right now.
Jimmy, let me interrupt you real quick. Let me interrupt you real quick and just say one more thing about Deion. Think about this stat. They're 4-0. His team's 4-0. They've outscored opponents 190-37. Right. Like, you imagine if you could bring an offense like some kind of run and gun, like let's sling the ball around the field to Georgia Tech and get. Oh man, that would be fun for them. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're. The entrance requirements would be interesting, who you can get into school and that type of thing. I think a guy that is really interesting to me, and whoever grabs him is going to be hitting a grand slam, and that's Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina. I think that the Sun Belt is the strongest Group of 5 conference in Division I. He's 25-3 in this league. in the last 2.5 seasons. And he's young, I think he's like maybe 44, and he's had probably 10 years of head coaching experience. And again, what he's done at Coastal is tremendous. And that spread option attack he runs, and he's had really good dual threat quarterbacks who could throw the ball. I think that would really fit in at Georgia Tech, because everybody criticized kind of how boring the Paul Johnson Georgia Southern Navy offense was, because passing wasn't a big part of their offense, but in the Chadwell scheme, passing is a big factor, and they've been really tough to deal with. So I would watch for him, if not at Tech. He's going to be a strong candidate, I think, at just about any Power 5 opening.
Yeah. The other name I thought I've been reading about too is the coach up at App State. I mean, with Sean Clark. I mean, what they've done this year, and what the interest that he's starting to generate too. But isn't that funny? Like in the coaching circle, like you can literally just have a couple of big statement win game, and then make another big last second Hail Mary that wins a game for you, and all of a sudden you're the hottest coach in America. And those two games alone probably made him upwards of $10 million in his career. Just because of the popularity it gets. So
Tommy, just keep in mind, Eli Drinkwitz went 11-1 at App State, and he's the coach at Missouri now. Nice guy, he probably the best dressed guy at SEC Media Days, wearing a blue and white seersucker suit with bucks. He looked great, But I think you're right though. You and Jimmy talking about Jamie Chadwell. Then you got to be with Georgia Tech. That again, I just remember growing up as an Auburn fan. That game, my dad will tell you, they beat Auburn 15 years in a row. When Auburn finally broke that streak against Georgia Tech, I mean, it was like, the Berlin Wall coming down. Okay. It was a big deal. And I'm just, here we are talking about the seismic effect of the right coach coming into Georgia Tech and Wake Forest, NC State. These are really tough. You went to NC State. You're kidding around. Seriously, you're a very smart guy. I've talked to you enough to know that. I've seen your resume. People, don't be fooled by Tommy. He was born in the afternoon, but not this afternoon. Okay. But Tommy, that's a job. If I'm a coach, I'm going crazy. I will credit Jeff Collins when he got there. We're trying to brand the 404, the 678, the 770. Atlanta's got so many dadgum area codes, but there's it went from 5 to 22 counties, 6.5 million people. You've got so much talent right there. You could get all the kids that suffer from being homesick when they go to camp, just say stay in town and go to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, you're right. But that's what I said earlier, though. But they also can be like, hey, Athens is only 2 hours away, and we're national champions here. And there's a whole different level of.
You're right.
There's a whole different level of you go walk on their campus and see the facilities at Athens versus the facilities at Georgia Tech and everything else, and the game day experience. I mean, it's a tough sell right now. So I think that's why you got to come in with somebody that's going to really shake things up and really, stir the pot, so to speak, with recruiting and everything else, and go steal a bunch of players out of a portal and everything else. And I think that's what you're going to have to do. Look, in college football these days, you're not going to start over a program and it's with all the recruits that you get. And after the fourth year, like you get a bunch of 4-star recruits, and 4 years later when they're seniors, you're all going to be really good. It's just not, it's got to happen faster than that nowadays. And it's because of the transfer portal and the short patience of all the fans,
Yeah.
They don't want to sit through a rebuilding of, in 5 years we'll be good. No, I mean, you've already been bad for 5 years. Let's be good in a year or two, and let's move on,
Well, look what happened last year to Mel Tucker at Michigan State. He brings in 15 guys in the portal, and they win 10 or 11 games, and he gets a 10-year, gazillion dollar, $100 million. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah.
Contract, but that's how desperate. Well, first off, the money's there to do it from the TV contracts. So schools, they look at these buyouts now. If you're Auburn and you say Brian Harsin, if they feel like they've got to make the change, and I'm sure they do, $15 million versus what it'll cost you in terms of withheld funds from your donors. because they're tired of you putting a bad product out there. Because I can assure you, and you know this, Tommy and Jimmy, Georgia Tech alumni, again, have some of the strongest balance sheets in America, the world. But again, that's a problem. A football game doesn't necessarily mean college football to a lot of their students because they're international students, and that's what they call soccer. That is a problem. That's why Artemis Powell sent that text in asking, are they serious about competing? But Tommy, you're right there in Atlanta, and you see, you're right. How do you compete against what they're doing over in Athens or in Clemson or at schools west of the Chattahoochee? That's what blows your mind. But again, there in Atlanta, that Deion, he's going to go somewhere. And Jimmy makes very valid points. Not a big body of work to look at to this point.
Right. That's true. I mean, there's no question that's true. But then you do look at what he's done in such a short period of time, and you're like, yeah. And then if you're Georgia Tech and you really want to get excited, I mean, look, they've suffered through the triple option for so many years, and this kind of boring, kind of the offense. And, when you're down by 14 and you run the triple option, forget it. The game's over, right? I mean, you're not going to come back from 14 down in the fourth quarter when you're running the triple option. So they were suffering through that. And now they're suffering through just not having enough athletes and their best players transferring to Alabama to get in the limelight there and playing well. So I think that, to me, like Deion Sanders in Atlanta, and that storyline is there and everything else. And if he can bring that excitement of scoring points in bunches and bringing a wide open offense and getting the right players in here, I mean, why not take a chance? I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's not like he doesn't know football. It's not like he can't motivate. Yeah. It's not like kids don't want to come play for Deion Sanders. So I don't know. I to me, on the outside looking in, makes a lot of sense. But again, comes down to the AD too, and what they do with the AD and who they bring in next to be the AD if they do switch out the athletic director. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it.
Well, you're making so many great points and giving a lot of good reasons why Deion would be successful. A city like Atlanta, the largest college sports town really in America. Jimmy, I know we just got a few minutes left with Tommy, but I agree. But, if a guy's got it, he's got it. But again, look at Tom Herman. He wasn't a head coach that long. Texas took a chance on him. It happens a lot. You got to find a lot of it is just the timing and everything. But whoever the Georgia Tech coach is, again, he's trying to build a house on the Gulf Coast around Tampa right now with a Cat 4 hurricane coming down.
Your analogy might be hitting too close to home in the next couple of days, right? I mean,
yeah. And I hope that thing disappears. But
right.
That's what that job is. Georgia Tech, incredible tradition, Jimmy. Incredible.
Well, I would not like Todd Stansbury making the decision. I'll tell you that.
No.
And I don't think he's going to be. So I think Georgia Tech and Auburn fans are kind of in a similar position in that, from the optimistic side, you can look at where Tennessee was 2 years ago at this time. They were in a horrible position. And if you make the right decision at AD, it can change everything.
That's
because if they bring in the right guy and they have a system, or in Saban language, a process, and they're able to execute it, and recruits and transfer portal players and current roster members buy in on it, then you can change things in a hurry. But that's why your people in the administration are just so important. The AD and the coach have to be on the same page.
Yeah.
The AD, and a lot of people don't think about this, but the president have to be all in. The president has to publicly support athletics. It's absolutely critical, and that has to extend to the board of trustees. So there are a lot more intangibles that people realize, but they've got to get this AD. I think they are going to make an AD hire. I mean, they haven't announced anything on that officially, but they got to get that fixed before you can get this thing turned in the right direction.
Tommy, Jimmy nailed it. You talk about Tennessee's rise so quickly in year 2 under Josh Heupel. They had players, but they also had about 42 of them leave when Jeremy Pruitt and 8 other coaches were fired. I'll say this. You had the AD, Danny White, hired, and then he brought his coach with him. Let's say you get someone like John Hartwell comes to Auburn to be the next AD. He knows a lot of coaches out there, but Tommy, you got to have the AD in place first. Jimmy's right.
You do. I mean, it's a great point. And, the UT is a great analogy. I mean, it was exactly a couple of years ago, the bottom of the barrel, they were struggling. The fan base was all pissed off and they were down on the dumps. And now look at them. And they're playing great football. I mean, Hooker's a fantastic quarterback, and he's lighting up he's a Heisman Trophy candidate now. I mean, you could potentially have the Heisman Trophy winner from Tennessee this year. I would have never thought that 3 years ago. So things can change rapidly. Things can change quickly. And a lot of it, again, goes back to the transfer portal. I mean, you can really go out there and just get some players and other players that aren't happy, and maybe the bad apples in the group, you can be like, hey, why don't you go play somewhere else?
Yeah.
And get rid of that and clean house and bring in the guys that you want that buy in your system. You don't have to worry about the recruiting of the high school players. I mean, sure, it's still important, but knowing that you don't have to bring them in and then get them to mature until their junior, senior year before they really become impact players. You can get impact players right away. Yeah. And that is a whole new dynamic in college football.
Yeah, look, we run out of time, but you nailed it, Tommy. Great. I appreciate you staying on long with us today. I wanted to do this because a lot of times we get on here and I'm going, man, Tommy, you really know a lot about this. Jimmy as well, obviously. I tell you one thing right now, though. In East Tennessee, if the hardest thing to find with Tennessee's rise in football is a clear mason jar. Man, they are having some fun up on the hill. I'll just tell you that. Tommy, we're going to get you back on here very soon. Great show, as always, as we are every Monday through Saturday. Go out and help with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. And, hey, college football is alive and well. We live in the greatest country in the world. We'll see you tomorrow.